If you clicked on this, this is a very simple response video on my previous video about Pokemon Champions being a nothing burger. If you haven't watched it already, I recommend you do, since this video is about it and it's just clarifying things. Also, the song you're about to hear in the outro is ISO by King Du. If you don't know what it is, it's the JJK Season 3 opening. My friend and I did a whole MIDI cover of it, so if you want to listen to it, it's in the description. Hi, I'm the guy on the internet who makes content like everybody else. So previously, I made a video on Pokemon Champions calling it a nothing burger, which left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. This video is just an addressing, so no, I'm not going to put your coordinates on the screen, but I will be going over a few little bits that I probably could have clarified and explained a little better. So as a first, I will say that I could have done better than a 6-minute video. Video was actually meant to be quick, snappy, and to the point, so people who were interested in Pokemon battling or trying to get into the VGC format were a little bit better informed and just had it summarized and dumbed down. So I see why it's a little bit of a problem to dumb down said information. So yeah, that's why I think people saw some of my bits as shallow or anything like that, since I did briefly mention things, and I think one of them was the bots. I think I mentioned it for a few seconds, so I could have clarified that to be something like a personal experience, and it should have been taken with a grain of salt. Regardless, this video is to do that clarification, and I'll just start with a simple one. The title. Yes, the title is slightly there for clickbait, and yes, I know the term nothing burger has a negative connotation, but I meant it in a literal meaning that it's serviceable and it's just not a very packed game. So the point of my video wasn't to completely shit on it, since, I had a whole big segment that took up majority of the video, finding reasons as to why it's still pretty decent and an alternative to Pokemon Showdown. But the point was still to explain as to why Pokemon Showdown was just simply better in terms of team testing, team building, and just better quality of life than Pokemon Champions. If anyone actually read the description in the video, I did state that I consider the game to be neither good or bad, which is why I called it a nothing burger to begin with. I even said in the video that it was edible as a game. It's not the world's worst Pokemon game that belongs to Pokemon Garbage Green. So regardless, calling the game a nothing burger was just an old school YouTube trick called clickbait. If you clicked it out of anger over the title or thumbnail, then you got. But otherwise, I meant it as an edible, a serviceable kind of game, but it's not, anything special. The idea that the game was actually for no one came from the point where I said Pokemon Showdown was objectively better than Pokemon Champions. Majority of the categories that Pokemon Champions tries to hit, such as singles, VGC doubles, limited formats, and so forth, was kind of already covered by a battle sim that was made 15 years ago. A smug comment that I read was saying that he enjoys climbing the Devil's Ladder in an interesting and limited format, and which you could also do in Pokemon Showdown, so yeah. And honestly, it's got multiple different formats, singles and doubles and different metagames, so you can have all your fun in it, and Pokemon Champions could have just been encapsulated into a single metagame on Pokemon Showdown. Furthermore, another thing people were talking about is how VGC and it's supposed to be targeted to VGC players and people who are interested in it, which is still kind of covered by Pokemon Showdown. So not only can you go back to old formats on VGC, you could actually practice the new ones that are upcoming. Obtaining Pokemon in Champions is entirely through the random pull system or by transfer, meaning that you would need to go and do far more work to team build than you would in Showdown. Obviously, that might be a slight exaggeration considering it is just transferring a single Pokemon that you can train it in the game, but in Pokemon Showdown, you don't need to do any of that, and you just type the name of the Pokemon and the moves and the abilities and everything, and it's good to go. As I said, it's for no one, really, because the target demographic of VGC players would probably still use Pokemon Showdown as their way to test their teams against real people. I have currently, on record, played Pokemon Champions for about 3 to 4 hours, so it's not as long as some people. The reason I dropped it was just because I had a personal issue that I took with it, so yes, take this with a grain of salt. So I found the membership part especially an issue just for someone like me who has a personal preference to theorycraft and make new teams after every minor issue or a loss. So I would be basically filling up the boxes with different teams because I don't want to replace the old Pokemon, if you get what I mean. I also had a problem with the currency of VP, but not for the reason you think I would. I actually had less of a problem of it's too hard for free-to-plays, but actually just out of a preference because Pokemon Showdown doesn't have a currency system, so you would just have the items and you would just go along with it. The reason I actually considered the currency, such as VP and the whole system about it, a bad thing, was because I was comparing it to Pokemon Showdown, and it's simply just an accessibility thing that I personally had a little gripe with, since I just want to try and play test and build my teams like that. So it's not as much of a problem as some people might say, but personally, I didn't find it as big of a problem. I just had a gripe with it. I had a brief mention of playing against bots, and from my experience going up to Master Ball actually, was just filled with people who were making obscenely questionable decisions. If I had recorded some gameplay, I would have put it here. Unfortunately, I don't have it because I don't have a capture card. But in essence, these bots were an issue to me specifically because of how frequently I came across people who just didn't know what they were doing. So this might have been just a player-based thing, and I found people who just weren't bots, but, you know, bad players. But, you know, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way in that way. So I want to preference that it is a personal thing and a personal experience. You might not come across it, but I personally have found that I thought there were so many bots on the game that it was kind of a bit of an issue to me. But regardless, you might have a different experience. I actually disagree with the notion that Champions and Showdown has different player bases. For one, there's a lot of overlap in the game mechanics. While, yes, Champions is a slightly less charming version of Pokemon Stadium, it still shares that focus on battles. That focus on battles, whether it's VGC or single, is still in Showdown, meaning that the player-based demographic is likely people who enjoy Pokemon battles. I call Pokemon Showdown objectively better because it has that quality of life, infinite box space off rip, all the Pokemon you could have used prior or current in the games, and has different metagames and so forth, right? Champions simply has less in the package than Showdown does, and makes it, by definition, objectively better. I never actually stated that you could have a hard time staying free to play. I just called Pokemon Champions predatory. The reason for this being predatory is very, very clear, as it has a lot of sections in the game that will kind of prod you for opportunities for you to pay for better quality of life, which could have been done off the jump. Honestly, you could have just added that at the start. And while, yeah, I did fairly play comfortably as a free-to-play minus the box issues, it kind of felt off having things like Poke Me to sort of pay for stuff. But do you want to know what doesn't poke you for your money? Pokemon Showdown. Yeah, okay, this video was just a clarifying video. New one next week, so stay tuned. Outro song is going to be different, so enjoy.